ist im weltweiten Ranking der Smart Cities derzeit auf Platz 4, aber hat noch ganz viel vor, will quasi nach vorne schießen. Was das genau ist und wie sie es erreichen wollen, das wird uns gleich Oiver Hall verraten. Der ist eigentlich Brite, lebt aber schon lange in Dänemark und ist in Kopenhagen jetzt der Head of Fintech und AI Investments und hat dort eben die Entwicklung Kopenhagens zu einer smarten, zu einer intelligenten Stadt maßgeblich weiterentwickelt und maßgeblich mitgestaltet. Denn das Ziel, was sich Kopenhagen gesetzt hat, ist ziemlich ambitioniert. Bis 2025 wollen sie da die erste komplett klimaneutrale Stadt der Welt werden. Und dafür sollen einerseits Energieproduktion und auch Energiekonsum, aber auch die Mobilität in der Stadt natürlich neu aufgesetzt werden. Es soll neue Lösungen geben und das Ganze dann zusammen mit der Stadtverwaltung soll smart werden, wie man das so schön sagt. Oiver setzt dabei auf eine Zusammenarbeit aus Start-ups aus der ganzen Welt, großen Unternehmen, Big Tech-Playern, aber natürlich auch aus der Wissenschaft und zusammen mit den Bürgern wird das Ganze vor allem entwickelt. Und wie das genau funktioniert und welche Herausforderungen es gibt, was man daraus lernen kann, so für uns zum Beispiel, das wird er uns jetzt verraten. When we're talking about smart cities, everybody has like a picture in mind. What is a smart city? So how would you define a smart city?
Big question, and you're completely correct in saying that everybody has a different characterization of smart city, and it's interesting when you go from Europe to Asia and the Americas that you'll get a different answer each time. For us, it is a city which works for its citizens in improving the quality of life and the general standard of living for its citizens, and keeping a human-centered approach in the city design. In Copenhagen, it mostly means sustainability and the reduction of carbon emissions. Copenhagen will be the world's first carbon neutral capital city by 2025. The process starting in 2013, and many of the smart city initiatives are within this strategy. So yeah, I'd say sustainability and carbon reduction would be my top two keywords for smart city.
So when you're trying to become a smart city as a city, what are the things that you have to bear in mind? What would be your proposal, or what would you recommend to any city that says, okay, we want to copy the Copenhagen way?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think the most important thing is a consensus and a commitment. There's a very, very clear targets that Copenhagen has by 2025, and that is only possible because it has the support and the buy-in from, we call over here the triple helix, or maybe the quadruple helix. The triple helix, we say, is the public sector, the private sector, and research and academia. But equally important, and who's in each of those three, are the citizens. Yeah, I mean, the process started here in 2011 when we had a 1 in 100-year storm, flood, which devastated a lot of the city in July. And in September, there were 200 stakeholders who were brought together from public sector, from private sector, the universities, but also citizens. And they sat down I think just over 200, and realized that, you know, the issue of climate change is certainly not going away. Issues of globalization, meaning that there's a huge amount of urbanization and movement to the cities in a very, very large scale, never seen before in mankind's histories. So what would be the best way to mitigate, not just mitigate the effects, but to give the best possible future for its citizens? And those 200 stakeholders created 22 business plans, which then became the basis for a holistic strategy, which became the Copenhagen 2025 strategy.
So in short, if there's a city coming to you and say, okay, we want to become a smart city, what would you recommend?
Well, we're always open to show public, private, and sectors and researchers from cities around the world to come to Copenhagen and see a lot of the projects and the strategy themselves. We're happy to knowledge share there. I would say if they wanted to learn, then the most important thing is the consensus, because you see in many countries that maybe just the public sector puts out a public tender to a company, and there can be a lot of backlash because the people aren't involved to the extent that they should be. And you must have everybody, involved, or at least have that support. So that would be my first point. And then it depends on whether what the city is looking for. Is it looking for carbon neutrality? Is it looking for a better quality of life for its citizens? Is it looking for an easier mode of transport for its citizens? So it varies greatly. But at least, in Copenhagen's case, it's been doing this for 50 years almost. Denmark was the world's first country to pass an environmental protection law, to create onshore and offshore wind turbines. It's not the world's first, but it went nuclear free in 1985. So it's had a lot of experience in these green initiatives.
How did you build that trust, that people trust you and give the data away willingly without being so reluctant or without having too much discussions about that?
Yeah, it's not just on a smart city level. In smart city, it actually depends on what data you're looking at, whether or not it's mobility data or whatever. There are levels of how much data is used. So in the Nordic countries, at least, if you look on the European Commission's Eurobarometer, you can see that all the Nordic countries have the highest level of trust with their government. I don't know if that's a cultural thing or just the size of the countries, but people trust their government and the ministers to do the right thing. I don't think that there's been any data leaks with citizen data in Denmark. Certainly not since I've been here. So the trust is automatically there, and digital services are in every part of our lives here. From getting a home loan. I did that on my mobile phone.
Really?
Yeah, renegotiating my mortgage last week as well was just from, giving my thumbprint on this, going to the doctor, going to the library. After this call, I'll pick my son up from kindergarten, and I communicate with them via a mobile phone and biometrics as well. So digital services are a fundamental part of public life in Denmark. So there's an automatic trust there, and smart city depends on, data is being used, but there's levels of how much personal data is actually being used. If you're cycling on one of the, I think it's 1.2 million kilometers of cycle lanes that we have here, or at least that's what's cycled every day, with the 62% of cyclists every day. Then there are sensors which measure the cycle lane traffic, but that doesn't identify you necessarily. So yes, yeah.
Looking at your strategy, what have been the most important milestones looking at for reaching your goal of becoming carbon neutral in 2025?
Yeah, so the strategy, the Copenhagen 2025 strategy started in 2000. The strategy was published in 2013, and there are three pillars between that. There's 213 to 216, 217 to 220, and then 221 to 2025. And it's broken down into four pillars: the energy production, energy consumption, mobility, and city administration. The one which has the biggest weight is energy production, which accounts for about 80% of the carbon reductions. So Copenhagen did emit about 1.2 million tons of carbon dioxide every year, and the target is to get that down to zero, whilst we have 1,000 people every month moving to Copenhagen. So about 12,000 people a year, and families are moving. So more people, more emissions, but we're trying to push it down. There's a lot of different initiatives. I think there's 60 different projects within the strategy.
Can you name one, like your favorite one, maybe?
There's a lot. There's a lot, and there's really a lot. So we have what we call living labs, living laboratories, where the public sector work with the private sector and academia to test, develop, and implement a lot of different technologies in Denmark. It's mostly, there's a lot in Copenhagen, but it's in the surrounding areas as well. And you can see a lot of really, really cool technologies being tested in the early stages by small companies, big companies, and then being commercialized and sold overseas and domestically as well. One project. I mean, there's a lot. The Japanese.
What do these sensors in the city, in the bike lanes do? Why do you put sensors in the bike lanes?
A lot of reasons. There's a few different reasons, and actually, one of the examples I can give is something called Street Lab. The city of Copenhagen gave a stretch of road and cycle lanes just outside City Hall to as a living lab, where companies could test their solutions, where they would install sensors in the light posts or the overhead lighting light pillars, and test mobility. Yeah, they test sensoring for bike lanes, for traffic, for air quality, sound levels, etc., etc. The sensors in the bike lanes, they can measure a lot of different things. They can measure the number of cyclists coming in. They can adjust the traffic. There are apps which automatically adjust if there's too much traffic in at a specific time. That also goes for cars. If there's too much pollution from the cars, then you can have apps which will redirect traffic so that the air quality isn't so bad, although the air quality is quite good. There are sensors in the bike lanes which also measure the temperature and the amount of ice and snow that is on the bike lanes, meaning that the salt, what do you call them? The salt vans which go and sprinkle salt to get rid of the snow. They can be dispatched in the best possible way. They won't go around every single inch of the city to get rid of the ice, but they'll be, micro targeted so that they can go to one area of the city. Yeah, and the same sensors can be used for parking. Yeah, there's a lot of different applications.
So when there are so many things developed around, for example, one sensor or one project, there are lots of stakeholders in there, a lot of business companies, I believe.
Yeah.
How chaotic is this process? Because this is one of the big cons that people always say, oh God, there's so many people messing around and it's going to end in a chaos.
Yeah, and on the surface of it, you probably think the same thing. There are different ways. You can have a public tender, which is a fairly final way of doing it, or you can have some smart mechanisms before that. You can invite companies, the private sector and academia as well together in a kind of a pre-commercial procurement process where you gather everyone around the table. The city or the region will talk about what issues it has or what needs it has, and then the technology providers, the companies, can discuss what they can do potentially to solve these problems, and academia can come in and say, well, we can actually test, we can research and develop different solutions with the company to create a final solution for the city. There are lots of examples of projects here where you have everybody working together in some capacity to develop some solution. And then once the dialogue has finished, then you can pre-qualify different companies who've been in the the process to work together on finding a solution.
How do you pick them? Do you pick them by sheer numbers, like how expensive is it? What it's going to be, or what are like your standards?
Yeah, I mean, there's a different. I mean, it depends on which project as well. There's a lot of different criteria. We've recently just helped so Copenhagen Capacity, where I work. We recently helped the city of Copenhagen. They have a smart city playground called the Copenhagen Solutions Lab, which is where the street lab actually comes from. We recently helped them because they are in a pan-European project with 5 other pretty progressive cities. Tallinn, Helsinki, Stavanger, Paris, Copenhagen, and I'm forgetting.
Oh no, German city.
So no, sorry, it's mostly Nordic. It's North European, and Amsterdam. Sorry, it was with Amsterdam as well. And so it's a project. It's a 6-7 million euro project called AI for Cities, and they need AI expertise, or they need the expertise of AI companies to help them, realize or leverage the value of the data that they had. And we helped them to give a webinar to 250 people from around the world, where the city shared the issues that they have, that they like to fix. They don't know how to fix it, but they know what they want to fix, and then they present what they need to fix, and then the 250 people online are able to form consortia and then come back with a proposal to the project, and then there's a pre-commercial procurement process from there.
Now, it seems always to be that we are talking about smart cities, and that it's always the cities we're talking about. Although it's very important, or it should be important, to also talk about the countryside. How is it in Denmark? Is the countryside going to be smart and connected as well?
Yes, certainly. So Copenhagen Capacity, we're the inward investment agency for Copenhagen, and or from Greater Copenhagen. And I'd say Greater Copenhagen because we actually work with assisting 97 municipalities on the East Danish side, so Copenhagen and the surrounding regions, the city and more rural areas on the Danish side, but we also operate with our partners on the Swedish side in a binational way. So there are more. So Copenhagen is the largest driver of growth out of the 97 municipalities, but there are other projects. A lot of other projects with rural areas, so they're certainly not they're not left out. We had a project called it's still ongoing. It's called the Lighting Metropolis, which is an Interreg project, an EU interregional project to build the world's largest intelligent lighting cluster. In this case, across Denmark and Sweden. We already have a living lab in Denmark, which is Europe's largest, but the project seeks to create the largest integrated cluster. And there are more rural municipalities which are included in this. So you will see Internet of Things, Internet of Everything technologies being tested there, from mobility to waste management to cycling infrastructure.
You've been to a lot of countries, and you've seen a lot of different approaches of smart cities, like you said in the beginning. If you compare your model to the other countries' models, what would you say? What can other countries learn from the Danish approach?
I think that something which is, I think it's very Nordic and very, very Danish, is that there is a very human-centered approach to city planning over here. You can see a lot of different smart cities, from Singapore to Tokyo to, I mean, there's a long list. But what we're told time and time again from the companies who come here, and actually a lot of the politicians who come here as well, is that there is a real focus on putting the citizen right at the center. What would I want in a city? What would my family want? How can I increase quality of life? On every single different metric. And you always see that the Nordics, generally Denmark, Finland, and Norway, they usually fight between the happiest country in the world. But I think that at least the philosophy of having the citizen at the center of everything that's done is absolutely crucial to making the city smarter. And if you have the citizen at the center, and if the citizen is involved and engaged, and it makes that person's life better, then everything else, I guess, is relatively easy to fit into place there.
Oliver, thank you for your insights and for explaining us the Danish approach. And we wish you good luck for reaching your goal of becoming carbon neutral in 2025 in Copenhagen.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's been a pleasure today. Thank you.